So hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining Equal Justice Works today for this virtual regional event intended for students in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast regions to learn more about how to become an Equal Justice Works Fellow. My name is Brooke Meckler, and I am the director of the Law School Engagement and Advocacy Unit at Equal Justice Works. And I'm really excited to see so many people joining today, especially excited to see some familiar names and faces. So thank you so much for being here. There we go. All right, so today we're going to start off with an overview presentation that will review all the components of an Equal Justice Works Fellowship. And then we'll move into breakout sessions where you'll be able to meet with people who have actually gone through the fellowship. So fellows and alumni who have made really amazing impacts during their fellowships will be there to answer questions and talk about their experience. So definitely come to that session with questions. If you're able to have your camera on, please do so that you are able to interact with our fellows and alumni. Then if you're somebody who works at a law school, please join us at the Law School Professional Meetup because you'll be able to connect with your colleagues and talk about best ways to advise students when they're applying for fellowships. And then we'll invite everybody to meet with our fellowship staff at 1 o'clock. Krista and Allie will be there to answer questions about the application process for all of our fellowships programs. They're great, and they'll be there to just talk through some of the questions you might have. If you have questions during this overview presentation, just type them in the chat and we'll try to get to as many of those as possible. Other people on my team might type in the answer during the presentation, or I might get to it as we go through the slides. All right, so before we jump into the content, I'm going to put up a quick poll. If everybody can please fill this out. Let me know if you're a 1L, a 2L, a 3L, 4L. I'm a 10L, I think. So if you're a 10L, let us know if you're a recent graduate. We just want to see who's joining us today and who's excited to learn about this information. All right. Okay, so I hope everybody can see the results here. We have mostly 2Ls, some 1Ls, which is great. Thank you for joining. 3Ls and 4Ls, no recent graduates, no 10Ls. That's okay. I can be the only one, and some people from law school. So thank you so much for filling that out. It's nice to see who's joining. Okay, so just a quick introduction to Equal Justice Works. For those of you who are still being introduced to our organization, we're a nonprofit organization. We're typically headquartered in Washington, D.C. when we go to the office, but we partner with legal aid organizations and funders from across the country to create opportunities for lawyers and law students to transform their passion for equal justice into a lifelong commitment to public service. And we run the largest postgraduate fellowship program in the country with 300 fellows out in the field at any given time. We've had thousands of students go through our law student programs. We have 190 member law schools. We have thousands of alumni from our programs. We really do just have this great big network of people who are really dedicated to public interest law. And we're excited that more of you are joining that network today. So let's get into why everybody is coming to this event today, which is learning how to become an Equal Justice Works Fellow. And before we jump into the fellowship programs, I do want to sort of define what a fellowship means in the Equal Justice Works context, because across organizations and schools and other fellowship programs, it's defined in a couple different ways. But for Equal Justice Works purposes, postgraduate fellowship is a 2-year position, typically right after you graduate or within the recent years after you graduate, where you are working on a specific legal project. And it's different than a staff attorney position or another legal position because of the way that it's designed. And we'll talk about what that means in a minute, and where the funding comes from. So it is a full-time position. It's a fully paid position. You have benefits. It's a full-time job, but there is that term limit. And there are 2 ways that you can become an Equal Justice Works Fellow. You can either join a fellowship program or you can design your own fellowship. So if you join a fellowship program, this is really your chance to work as a core on a designated priority issue. And essentially how this works is that Equal Justice Works will build a program based on an unmet need that we've identified in the legal landscape. And to fill that need, we'll put a whole cohort of lawyers out in the field all at the same time so that they're able to have the greatest impact in that issue area. And because the need is typically so immediate and so important with programs like this, we usually need fellows out in the field right away. So these are the types of programs that you will apply to once you've already graduated from law school, sometimes after you've taken the bar exam, and sometimes when you've already found out that you've passed the bar exam. And we'll talk more about these rolling and seasonal deadlines when we get into the weeds of joining a fellowship program. The other way that you can become an Equal Justice Works Fellow is by designing your own fellowship. So this is the opportunity for you as the applicant to identify an unmet need that you've seen in the legal landscape, and then you build a project with a host organization around that need. This is really distinguished from other opportunities that you might see because you're actually partnering with an organization in advance of submitting your application to Equal Justice Works. And again, we'll get into all of the application details for designing your own project, but you can expect the same sort of timeline for designing your own fellowship for submitting that application every year. All right, so digging into what it means to join a fellowship program. So here's a snapshot of sort of the cycle of a fellowship program. So like I mentioned before, the program is designed by Equal Justice Works, and then we will have a competitive selection for host organizations to apply to be organizations who will host fellows within these programs. And these programs really range from a small group of lawyers, maybe 6 to 10 lawyers, to 80. In one of our most recent programs, we had that many fellows all working on issues related to victims of crime. So depending on the program, depending on the funding, there could be a lot of fellows out in the field working on the same issue area or a smaller amount. But either way, once those host organizations are selected, the organizations then go out and select the fellows that they will have in the fellowship during the 2 years. So there's another competitive selection process, and the organization does all the interviewing and selecting for the fellow that will be working at that organization within the program. So then once you're selected as a fellow, that's when you start your 2-year fellowship program. And like I mentioned, you're usually starting right away, which is why with a lot of these programs, we're hiring either brand new attorneys who have already passed the bar, or sometimes attorneys who are into their career and want to switch over to public interest or start their fellowship. So with your fellowship program, you join a community, you have ongoing training, you have technical assistance, you get to go to our leadership development training. We'll get into all the benefits of being a fellow later on, but that's sort of a snapshot of what it looks like. And we're really happy that 85% of our fellows stay in public service after the fellowship. So how do you join a fellowship? So when you're ready for this, the first thing you'll want to do is learn about our programs and learn about the programs that are available at that moment. Because Equal Justice Works offers fellowship programs that address a range of legal issues. So following graduation, definitely explore our current programs and see which one aligns most closely with your passions. And then you select a program. So what you'll do is you'll view a list of the organizations that are a part of that program, and then you apply for that specific fellowship at that specific host site. Again, availability of fellowship positions at host organizations really depend on where the program is in the cycle. You'll definitely want to be a part of our network and make sure you're getting our newsletters, especially our Jobs Digest, to ensure that you know when a fellowship is hiring. And then you apply directly to that organization that you'd like to work for. So candidates will just submit their applications directly to participating host organizations. The supervisors will interview and select you, and then you'll become an Equal Justice Works Fellow. So here are the 3 current fellowship programs that have fellows out in the field right now working on these issue areas. The first is our Disaster Resilience Program, and these fellows provide comprehensive legal services in disaster recovery. These fellows are located in both Texas and Florida, and that is in response to Hurricanes Harvey and Irma from a couple of years ago. And then, of course, unfortunately, disasters tend to happen in those areas, and they've been responding to all of the issues that come after a disaster. We also have the Housing Justice Program, and these fellows provide legal advice, referrals, and full representation for tenants in support of safe, fair, and affordable housing. This program is narrowly located in Richmond, Virginia right now, but our team is working to expand it to other parts of Virginia and hopefully to other parts of the country as well. And lastly, we have our Elder Justice Program. These fellows address the gap in civil legal services for victims of elder abuse and exploitation, with a special emphasis on serving rural communities. And we actually have 2 vacancies in this program right now. In Alaska and in Illinois. We will be posting those on our website shortly. I know there are no recent graduates tuning in today based on our poll, but if you're someone that works at a law school and you're working closely with alumni who are looking for fellowship positions, please let them know that there are openings there. All right, and moving on to our program benefits. So the salaries with our cohort programs really depend on the program itself, as well as healthcare coverage and other fringe benefits, but they're all included as a fellow. You also get to attend our leadership development training each October of your fellowship. And this is just an amazing event that brings all of our fellows together, both who have designed their own programs and who have joined our cohort programs. And you get to attend workshops and trainings, meet with a lot of public interest leaders, a lot of alumni of the fellowship programs, and really prepare you for not only your fellowship, but for your career after. With our fellowship programs, you also have a lot of additional trainings, learning events that really help you make the best of your fellowship. And I think the best part of being in one of these cohort programs is this built-in network of dedicated practitioners in your issue area. So, remember, you're in a cohort of fellows all working on the same issue area. So if you have a question, if you want to know how another lawyer handled a case that's similar to yours, you have that direct connection, which is just so important when you're a lawyer out in the field. All right, and moving into the Design Your Own Fellowship. So this is really the opportunity for you as an applicant to design your dream job for after you graduate law school. And like I mentioned, it's really distinguished from other opportunities because you're partnering with an organization in advance of submitting your proposal. And that organization is promising to host you for the 2 years of your fellowship. They're helping to design your project, but you're the one who's really working on it. You're the one who's the fellow who's going to have the passion and the knowledge to really get this project off the ground. So let's talk about what that really means. First, here's a snapshot of our most recent fellowship class, our most recent fellowship classes, I should say. So in the class of 2019, we had 76 fellows who designed their own projects and went out into the field to put them into play. Last year, we had our largest class ever with 85 fellows out in the field. And this year, we're well on our way to have more than 70 fellows. We're still at the very end of that process where we're confirming all of those fellowships for the class of 2021. And because this is you designing your own project and it's essentially a business proposal that you're submitting to Equal Justice Works, there are a couple of components that we're sort of going to pick apart. And that is you as the candidate, the project that you're designing, the host organization that you're partnering with, and your sponsor. Starting with you as the candidate, really the most important part of the fellowship application is you, because it's your passion, it's your knowledge, it's your understanding of the community that is really going to make this project stand out. So how are you eligible? First, you have to graduate from a member law school by the time your fellowship starts. So if you're a 2L right now, you're probably on track to graduate by September 2022, which means that you should apply in this upcoming application pool, which will be in September. And you can graduate with a JD or an LLM or both. You can't have held any full-time permanent public interest attorney positions before you apply for the fellowship. And that's because this is really designed to launch your public interest career. And if you've already been able to do that by getting your dream job at a legal aid organization as a staff attorney, then you don't really need the fellowship to do that. So that also goes for some of these major fellowship programs as well. Skadden, Echo and Green. If you graduate and you're able to secure one of those fellowships, unfortunately, you can't come back and apply for the Equal Justice Works Fellowship, but you can apply for all of them within the same year, and many of our applicants do that. What's sort of special about our fellowship program is the fact that we don't ask for transcripts, we don't ask for your GPA, we don't ask for your class rank. None of that is required. None of that is considered when we look at your fellowship application. What the real key to success is your demonstrated commitment to public interest, your experience in the area that you'll be working in, your understanding of the community, your passion. That's what we're really looking for. And that's what's going to make you stand out, not the numbers on your resume. So the project itself, I keep talking about you developing this project, but what does that really mean? So an eligible project will focus on underserved people and or issues in our legal system. And that can mean a lot of things. On the next slide, I have a chart of all of the fellowship projects that were funded in 2020, so you can see some of the issue areas. But when it comes to the actual kind of work that you're doing, it can be direct services, it can be other types of advocacy. You can be doing education either to clients or to pro bono attorneys, litigation, or some combination of all of those things. Really, the best projects sort of focus on a lot of different ways that you can help low-income individuals. Projects for Equal Justice Works Fellowship should also be innovative. And I don't want that word to scare anyone. An innovative project and providing innovative legal services is really something that you're able to do and you're able to build a project around. And what we really mean by that is that your project is either expanding or creating access to resources or services that your organization would not really be able to provide if not for your project. So that can be done in a lot of different ways. One caveat is that it can't focus on international law. So it needs to be a US-based project on US law. Some keys to success is remember that this is a new project. It's supposed to be innovative. It's something that you're going to be working on in a very unique way at the organization. So it really shouldn't look like a staff attorney position that already exists there. It's not a public defender position. So keep that in mind as you're developing the project. And the good news is that we have sample applications throughout the application cycle. So if you're wondering what that innovation or what that unique project looks like, we have great examples for you to see. Also, there should be built-in sustainability with the project that you're designing, meaning that it should have the potential to live on after the 2 years that you're working on it. So if you decide or if you leave the organization after the project, it should still be able to sort of sustain itself and have a life longer than the 2 years. Also, it should be ambitious, meaning that you want to make big change, but also feasible. So just keep that in mind with the balance when you're designing your project. And what really helps in making sure that you're doing that is having a review team of people who have seen applications before, maybe even somebody who was selected as a fellow before, and they can let you know if what you're planning on is a little bit too much for 2 years, or maybe if it's not enough. All right, so I mentioned this earlier, but this is sort of a chart that shows where our fellows were working on issue area wise in 2020, or they're still working on that, but they were selected for the 2020 class. So I'll kind of mention that these topics at the bottom here are like the main topics of those projects, but there's a lot of overlap between issue areas, and these are just sort of the main ones that these fellowship projects focused on. You can see the most funded type of application in 2020 was immigration, children and youth, we had criminal justice reform, and then across the board, we funded a lot of different issue areas. All right, so a major part of your project is the organization that you're partnering with. So you'll be partnering with a nonprofit organization with legal staff that's capable of providing benefits, health insurance, office space typically, but who knows going forward, but really be able to support you throughout your fellowship and be able to supervise new attorneys like you. It must be based in the United States or its territories as well. When you think about your organization, really keys to success is ensuring that your supervisor has experience in your project area, so they're best able to support you not only throughout your fellowship, but throughout the application process itself. Ensuring that your project aligns with the organization's mission, the organization's sort of strategic vision on how they want to help populations. And in terms of actually partnering with your organization, a prior relationship is always a plus. It's always a great place to start with an organization that you've interned with in the past, that you volunteered with in the past, so that you can sort of leverage that relationship because they know you know them, and it might be a really good fellowship sort of combination right off the bat. If you don't have a prior relationship with an organization that you might want to partner with, psjd.org is a great place to look at just to get ideas about where organizations usually host fellows. And they'll also actually post solicitations to apply with fellows right on that website. Use your career services office. I always want to plug your career services office. They are there to help you throughout this whole process, and they can probably connect you with somebody who works at an organization that might want to host a fellow. But make sure you're really looking far, you're looking wide for the best fit for you, and you feel free to talk to several organizations until you find the one that you can best partner with for your fellowship. In terms of location, this is just a quick snapshot of where our 2020 fellowship host organizations were located. 48% were in major cities, 39% were in other smaller cities, and 13% were in rural communities. All right, the last component of the fellowship project is our, the very generous sponsor who's helping to fund your fellowship for the 2 years. These sponsors are law firms, they're corporations, foundations, bar associations, sometimes individual donors, sometimes anonymous donors, and they help us fund the fellowships because they have such a strong commitment to the mission of Equal Justice Works. And because of that, they typically have preferences as to what type of fellowship they would like to fund. And they have interest in a specific issue area. And they're very engaged in the selection process and throughout the 2 years of your fellowship. So if you're interested to know where sponsors have funded fellows in the past, please look at our website. We have a tab, and you can use this tab of our website for many purposes, but one of which is to see where fellowships have been sponsored in the past. But it's called Meet the Fellows. And if you click on that, you can search by geographic area, by issue area, by law school, by a lot of different filters to get an idea of where some of that funding lies. But we also share that information throughout the fellowship process as soon as we have it. But that is to say that if you see a sponsor preference that isn't in line with exactly what your project would be, don't let that deter you from applying. We have sponsors that just want to fund great projects no matter where they are. And our fellowships team is amazing. They're always going out and trying to get funding for as many projects as humanly possible throughout the fellowships process. All right, and here is a snapshot of the benefits that you can expect. Salaries are set by the host organization, and it will be similar to whatever the staff attorney, an entry-level staff attorney would be making at that organization. You have healthcare coverage, you have other fringe benefits. You are also a part of our loan repayment assistance program if you'd like to be. You also attend that leadership development training that I mentioned earlier. And of course, you're part of this network of thousands of alumni at this point and fellows who have gone through the same experience that you have. All right, so digging into what it means to actually write your application. Remember, this is very different than a standard job application. And the focus on you is really important. So the focus on your unique ability to bring the right project at the right time with the right organization is so important when you're thinking about what this application looks like. So as you're, drawing out what you're going to put in your application, in your proposal, you want to demonstrate your ability, and you want to blend data, personal stories, client narratives that you've had with other experiences to really highlight what your impact would be within the project. And again, we have sample applications so you can see these different sections, but you'll be filling out a statement of need, why the project is needed, the goals, what your timeline is, your personal statement, and what your sponsor involvement might look like. So do's and don'ts. And really, these are just don'ts. These are the most common application mistakes that we see, and we want all of the applicants to know to avoid them. So the first is writing too little. So there is a platform that you'll go into and fill out a form to actually submit the application. And there are like boxes that you're going to fill in your application answers with. If you're not getting to the character limit, it means that you're not providing enough detail. And if you think you're being succinct, you're probably not providing enough for the people who are looking at the application to get a sense of what you're doing. So be near that character limit. That's our first tip. The second is you do not want to neglect the pro bono opportunity section. This section is very important because sponsors might jump right to it to see how they can get involved in your project, how they can really make an impact with you as you go through the 2 years of your project. And if you attend our staff session later, Krista on our fellowships team is an expert in talking about how to really show engagement through the pro bono opportunity section, but spend time on it. Definitely don't skip over it just because it seems like it's not integral to your project. It really is when it comes to somebody who wants to fund it. Your personal statement. Your personal statement should be something that you write particularly for this application. It shouldn't be you taking a cover letter from another job application that you use or trying to sort of use your resume in a way that turns into a personal statement. It should be very unique to this fellowship application. Another thing to avoid is not including information about the sort of service provider landscape in the community that you'll be working. We all know you can't do it alone. Lawyers need to partner with other social services, with other organizations to make sure that they're reaching clients, to make sure that they're making an impact. And so you should definitely know that about the community that you'll be working in and talk about it within your application. Another thing to avoid is being overambitious with your project design. Remember, it's a 2-year project. Some of our scorers, we have alumni that score the applications. They'll know if it's not a 2-year project. If they say this is amazing, but it's going to take 10 years, that's when you really want to shorten it up. Your project description is also important. It might be the first thing that somebody looks like. It's right at the top of your application. And I think some people think, whatever, I'll put whatever sentence works there and then go to the rest of the application. It should be a very compelling sentence. It should really catch the attention of anybody who's looking at it. And then this goes for any single application or anything that you do. There should be no typos, spelling, grammar errors anywhere in your application. And this comes back to that review team. You might want to have your friend who's always on you for your grammar look at this and look at your application just for that, so that you don't have to worry about that when you submit it to Equal Justice Works. So what can you do now to prepare? Well, you're already doing it. You're attending this event. You're starting to think about it. But if you're a 1L, keep getting experience. Make sure that you're really seeking out these different ways that you can get experience in the issue area that you care about. And you have all summer to do that. You have all next year to do that, but keep it in the back of your mind that, you know, you are building a resume, you're building an application every time you're doing anything out in the legal field. And then 2Ls and 3Ls, find a host organization. So this is really your time to start partnering, start the application process. Remember, you're submitting this application in September and you want it to look really great. So you should start it early. And there is a letter of recommendation requirement. So start asking professors now, ask supervisors now. You know that that can take a long time to get that letter actually written. So ask as soon as possible for any application that you're sending in, but especially for this one. And you can always start fine-tuning your resume, outlining your personal statement, even if you don't have a host organization yet, or even if you don't know what your project looks like yet, because you as a person, you're not going to change. So that personal statement is something that you can start writing now. And I know that we are at 12:30, so I'm going to show you the timeline, and then we are going to head out into those breakout sessions. So the applications will open in June, and that means that you can start going into the system and actually start working on the application. But you can start thinking about it and doing the work around it right now for sure. Applications are due in September. Then they're sent out to our alumni review team, and they'll score the applications, send them back to Equal Justice Works, and then that's when we'll start sharing the applications with sponsors based on the preferences that the sponsors have shared with us. So, you know, you might be on a couple of different slates in front of a couple of different sponsors, depending on what your project looks like, where it is, you know, what the issue area is. So you might have a couple of different interviews with a couple of different panels who are all interested in funding you. And that process happens starting in November and goes into March. And by May, that's when we close the selection process. We know who our fellows are going to be. You are relieved because you know what you're doing after graduation. You go on to take the bar exam that summer and start your fellowship up in September. And this is the tab that I was referring to earlier, where you can go meet our fellows. Great information on this page. I really recommend it. If you're starting out, you're trying to build out your project idea, you can always go to this page and get an idea of where fellowship projects are already happening or where they happened in the past. All right. Only 2 minutes over. That's so unlike me. Usually I'm like 15 minutes over. So it's time for our breakout sessions. What you're going to do now is go back to the original email that you got yesterday and click on the Zoom link for Meet with Fellows and Alumni, and go meet with the fellows and alumni that are sitting in the room right now waiting to talk to you. Again, if you can have your cameras on, please have them on. Come with questions. Make sure that you really take advantage of that time because they're great. And if you work at a law school, head over to our law school professional meetup so you can talk with your colleagues. And then after that, well, within the session that you're about to go to, we'll direct you to the breakout sessions after the fact. And this is my email. If you want to jot it down, you can always email me if you have questions about anything I talked about today, but the best people to answer them are in the breakout sessions next. All right, thank you, everyone. I will stay on the line in case anyone wants to ask me a particular question, but otherwise, go ahead and head to the breakout sessions.